There are many voices in the community.
Some are black.
Some are blue. This is blackandbluevoices.com.
Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Black and Blue Voices. I am your man in the middle, Brandon Bridges. To my left, as you've heard me say, the greatest chief since Sitting Bullhorn. Sitting Bull?
Bullhorn.
Can we redo that?
They even added the horn on there. I don't know.
I don't know why I said bull.
My title keeps getting longer, and I'm going to have problems
he's
putting
far
it
more
on my
Native
letterhead.
American with the word horn. That's why.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Brandon. We appreciate it. They always have some colorful title. I don't know that the greatest chief, all that, I tell you what, this just gets better and better every episode. So I don't know what to say.
Well, you gotta love that
Appreciate being
authenticity because we're gonna leave that in there.
Yeah. Leave it all in.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Come up with a good one for Eric.
I'm trying. Great minds take time
I'm a
to
mystery.
think.
You don't know me.
And
I'm a
to
mystery.
my right, the wonderful, stupendous Mr. Eric Alexander.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the same ring, does it? It's not the same.
Give us time. We'll do an entire episode. We're gonna go out to the audience. Eric's nickname. What do you want us to call
Send me a
Eric?
list.
Yeah,
God
absolutely.
help me.
His title.
And our Albert Einstein behind the computer screen, Mr. Mike Wilkerson.
Ach, du Lemur.
Yes, he was all ready for
And we
that.
are canceled. Well, thank you everyone who's listening, for joining us. Again, we love to have you out there. Just a couple guys in a room talking, various experiences, but we want to contribute to the conversation, and we'd love to hear your voices as well. So today we're going to kind of jump right into the tail end of our last episode, where we talked a lot about how do we get bad actors out, both communities. What does that look like?
Right.
What are those efforts, those perceptions and misconceptions about all of the communities around us?
Right.
But I think, Eric Alexander, you hit on something that I think most people will recognize immediately, and that's the defund the police slogan, right? That tagline. I think great intentions, poor execution.
Great intentions by some.
By some,
Not
as
others.
with all, there are always bad actors, as we established, but I think there was an intent that was lost there. So, as we move through this episode, I really want to talk about what are we actually doing, right? We've talked about the problems, some of the symptoms and things like that, but what can we constructively do to move this ball forward? So I'd love to get your thoughts on just that topic as a whole.
Man, starting easy, huh? just a softball to warm up.
Just a little pitch.
I think defund the police is, as I've said in previous episodes, the worst marketing slogan of all time, because it does include a whole bunch of stuff in it under the umbrella, and there's a lot of people saying a lot of different things inside of that, right?
Yeah.
So I use the example of police don't want to show up to a mental health call by themselves and feel unprepared. So defund the police covers, hey, we should at a minimum send somebody else, right? Send somebody who's a little more qualified along with law enforcement. But on the other side of it, it's get rid of police. And I continue to say that if you want to get rid of police, you don't really care about minority communities, because minority communities need policing as much or more than anybody else. So, and in the last episode, we talked about this differentiation between people inside the community and people who are commoditizing or using these situations to grandstand politicians, right? We've had some local folks, state folks, national folks who use that defund the police as sort of a running platform. And as with a lot of politicians, don't always define where they are in that spectrum. Right. But I think it's all born out of a lot of it is born out of trust, right? Like, and we always talk about law enforcement is a giant, well-funded organization with hierarchy and training requirements and all this stuff. And there is some people would say that if I can't trust everything, I can't trust anything when it comes to police, because they have so much power. Okay. Right. I see that. I understand that perspective. I don't 100% agree with it, but I understand it. And at times I felt it, right? Because when those lights come on behind you, you don't know who you're going to get. Not everybody is Christy Giuseppe.
Yep.
Unfortunately, or
Yeah.
fortunately, depending on the circumstances. But in this case, unfortunately.
I think most of
Actually,
our-
I want to chime in. It will never be Christy Giuseppe. Chris does not.
No,
Chris
wait a
does not
minute.
pull people over
if
anymore.
if you hit my car, I might pull you. I may pull you over.
Well, but I think that's a perspective. And Chief, I think you said this on one of our previous episodes: white, black, green, or blue. Most people feel that when they get pulled over.
Sure.
Right.
You know,
Some more
when
than others.
police officers
true.
are in their civilian car and they pass a police car, yes, adrenaline goes up. It doesn't matter because that's programmed into you. Oh my gosh, what's my speed? Everybody does it.
You weren't
Even-
born, you weren't
even-
born a cop.
Even police officers feel that too, and that's a deterrent. And sometimes it's a good thing, get everybody to slow down, so on and so forth. But yes, when and that's what I want to take people onto the other side of the perspective. When you're walking up on a car as a police officer, believe me, there can be some anxiety there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Sure.
it's and depending on the situation,
Which I would
You
say
know.
is also a good thing, because anybody who's having anxiety appreciates the gravity
Right.
of the situation that you're in. And
Right.
when you're wielding that much power and you become numb to that, that's why we have problems.
Well, and for a lot of people, it get perception, right? The reality for them is that it's life or death, whether that it is or isn't, whether that's on that officer's mind, whatever it is, right? That the reality, I think, for people across various communities, right? Not just Black communities, a lot of them feel or have been taught, as we touched on before, hey, this is a life or death situation. I might not die every time, but it has the capacity and the ability to become that
Right.
situation, right? So we've got these taglines, defund the police and all of that, which, as you said, terrible marketing ploy, right? Terrible way to sell what I think could have some good ideas wrapped into it. So,
Well, I think that because defunding the police, that even that title, though, I mean, it started out though. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm going back to, it came out of, the George Floyd incident. That's the first time that I had heard about it, and it seemed like it really wasn't. It seemed like that it progressed from, there was outrage because of the incident, and rightfully so, and it turned into a criminal case, it turned into a homicide, so on and so forth. But it seemed like the thing Eric was saying, we had some elected officials or political figures that kind of got on a course of dialogue where they said, let's do something about this. Let's do, we need to bring this to light. We need to do this. And then all of a sudden, some person in the back, well, let's just defund the police. And it was like the group mentality, the group think was like, yeah, until they started thinking about that. Wait a minute. You mean we're going to do away with the police? We're going to do it. And that's what Eric's saying is, hey, do you hear what you're saying?
Most people don't want that.
Do you hear what we're saying? And then, and if I'm being honest, it started like that. And then we had politicians and some elected officials, I won't paint everybody with a broad brush, but we had some that said, that started going, well, they started figuring out that is not a winning platform, politically.
Mhm.
Some tried it. Some actually took money away from police departments and were gradually trying to bleed off budgets and things like that. It all blew up in the end because they ended up having to put more. Once you do that, every police officer in that police department's like, ooh, I don't think I should be here. I'm going to go somewhere else. You're never getting them back either because they don't. I mean, that you have to have stability in your job, right?
But it's deeper than that,
Right.
Because the instant you start seeing that the local police department that has, quote, been defunded and a series of projects that you were either in or going to be benefiting from are now gone, as soon as you start to see that proliferate and you see it happening throughout law enforcement, that doesn't just mean that the people are going to be leaving that particular law
The
enforcement
profession
agency.
all
They're
together.
going to bail
In the
from
profession.
law enforcement, and they have.
And that's what happened. That's what absolutely happened.
Without question.
Recruitment and
question.
retention went down. I think that there was, but I think, to be fair, I think that there was afterwards, there was a faction that said, hey, we don't, and this was the shame of the whole thing. We want to help law enforcement. We want to provide law enforcement with resources. We want to take money and we want to put it in resources that's going to help law enforcement. Law enforcement for years, and this is true, has been saying, we can't deal with this mental health crisis that's out there. We can't deal with, we weren't trained. We are trained now. We had to get trained and become mental health professionals. I mean, I won't say we're counselors and such, but Mike Wilkerson has worked with, crisis cops and crisis negotiation and stuff. How far have we come in the field of trying to help and handle people in crisis?
Hugely. Opening the door, especially in regard to crisis negotiation and intervention, has been huge.
Right.
Now, having said that, I work and help train the people that are going to be the crisis negotiators that go into situations exactly like we're talking about.
Right.
Somebody's barricaded, and rather than having a whole bunch of jackbooted dudes that go in there and beat someone's ass,
right,
which was absolutely some of the book previously.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the optics of that absolutely do not work anymore. It doesn't. But more importantly, right. And that's the big thing, is that there is something more righteous to be doing than that.
Right.
So what they've started doing is they've now started looping in people that are inside of the mental health, the support structures that are put in for people that are in mental health crisis.
Right.
Now, again, having said that, I love to see that that's happening. The problem is that it's clear also that the people that jump into that have never actually seen somebody barricaded in crisis.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm not saying that to belittle any of the people that have taken the time and take the classes, because they're paying money just like everybody else, or their agency is paying the money just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that it is also something that has to be trained.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just because you are a counselor does not then mean you can then be a spoke in the wheel of crisis negotiation.
But
it does not work like that. It will never work like that.
And I
Keyword
think that,
crisis.
Right.
And I think that was the intent of some people that were saying, no, we don't want to take away police departments. We don't want to take away funding. We want to fund these other aspects to help law enforcement out. The political or elected officials who got on that grandstand, and grandstanding is always bad. I mean, we talked about this kind of before.
Broad brush.
When you grandstand, especially for self-gain, it's going to go bad in the end. So I think they started trying to walk that back and go, no, we're with the people that are saying, we want to help the police. We want to fund, these resources and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what they were saying in the beginning. And they were saying in the beginning, let's defund the police.
Well,
and that
take
was not
their money. They will
that
not
was
impact
not,
us
and that was
anymore.
not everybody.
Rage,
that was not
rage.
everybody. I have to say that there were people in the African American community that stood up and said, "Wait a minute, no, what? That's going to go bad." So,
a question I want to open up to the table here, and please, anyone jump in as you see fit. As I like to, again, call myself the man in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I see both sides of this coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at our police department and I don't see why certain police departments of 10 people need an up-armored MRAP. We've seen the proliferation of a lot of military equipment, gear, arms that have now trickled down to our local police departments, and their ROEs are looser than someone who is in an active combat zone. In certain cases, again, broad brush, but that is the perception of a lot of people. And that same token, there are people who say, well, yes, we need to give them more money so they have resources to bring mental health, capable people who are capable of performing mental health services on some of these calls. I've seen many of videos where family calls because someone's in crisis and that person ends up dead because of whatever reason, right? Multitude of factors. So what is the balance here?
So let's go back to that because there was a demilitarize the police movement prior to.
Well, there will always be that element.
The defund
there will always be that element inside of society. Why does any normal police department need an MRAP? Well, can we take that one for example? Yes.
Because
I want to chime in.
And then I want to go further from that and tell you. I want to tell everybody behind the scenes the actual fallout of all that. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
The sample is the four of us can, when we leave here today, go down to the range that I work in and acquire any one of a number of firearms,
as we should be
today,
able to
right now.
Yes.
Get all of the ammunition right now that will punch through everything except an MRAP or an up armored vehicle. And so the response to every single query of why does insert name of police department need an MRAP? The answer is because do you want people in crisis to die? Or do you want the police to have something protective so that they can be inserted into an area where there is some very serious shit going on?
Miami 1984.
Well, but I think
But
usage,
better than Miami in
I think
1984.
usage also
But that's
plays
the reason, right?
Yeah,
a look
absolutely.
into the perception or the North Hollywood bank shootings.
There you
that-
go.
And I
But-
think that was more appropriate because those guys were essentially rolling tanks.
Yes, but
They
I
were-
think
they
the
were human
perception
tanks.
that a lot, and again, I'm just giving you, and perception is reality for some, not absolute truth, right? I think
Right.
we've established that.
Right.
I know that I have spoken with people across all social, economic scopes who feel that, okay, maybe you have it for that situation, but why are you pulling it out for this situation, right? Why are we doing
For intimidation factor.
certain behaviors?
This is the other reason why
that
I wanted to
lend-
talk about it because inside of one of our crisis negotiator
Well,
sessions,
there's a whole lot to unpack on that, but go ahead.
yeah, inside of one of our crisis negotiator sessions, we took over a defunct bank. There's a bank right across the street from the municipality you serve in,
Mhm.
and we took over that bank. And I was the bank bomber, and I did not get my government disability check from being a former American hero serving my country bravely. Where's my check? And because I didn't get my check, and because I've gotten pushback because I didn't get my check, I roll in there and I've got what I'm telling them is a bomb, and let the entire training session ensue. And so, what do they roll up on a situation like that? They don't roll up a squad car.
No,
which
They don't
makes
roll up
sense.
the meter maid.
Bearcat.
Yeah, they roll in 2 Bearcats.
Yeah.
They roll in a series of robots. They roll in a series of drones because they
Drones.
have to, and they
Yeah.
have the resources to do it. That instantly gives them more intel about not only me in regard to the guy that might blow the place up, but everything that's going around the building. Whether it's somebody that's trying to get out, maybe some secret information that they can see through a window because of insert technology.
Mhm.
All of those things are a piece, but it is definitively intimidation, and I felt that. I'm not kidding. I'm like, when I jump into those acting scenarios, I am that dude, no question.
Yeah.
It was the
Mike
first time.
Wilkerson, method actor.
It was the first time I ever checked myself though, because
because you saw all the resources.
you got to be kidding me. Because it does.
Yeah.
It looks like
And
the beaches are being stormed, except that they're my beach.
Yeah.
And what the hell is that? Because most people, you might have seen a vehicle like an MRAP
Mhm.
or a Bearcat until you're actually standing about
They're
12
big.
feet from one,
Yep.
and it is a completely different experience. And that's what I'm saying is that the people that say, well, why do we need that? The answer is the intimidation factor, no question. But it's also to provide a conveyance so that there can be some solution.
well,
Because without it, Chris, where would an Element park if there was nothing like an MRAP or a Bearcat? How far away would you guys?
you'd have to not be able to see the actual building. But here's the thing. Force multipliers, they save lives. Let me give you an example. we have a case where we have a subject who mental health, addiction, all of that, goes and tries to stab somebody with a knife. He did not chases somebody, did not catch him, did not stab him, but he tried to. He's got a knife, he's armed, addiction, severe mental health, runs back, barricades himself in a hotel room. We respond. We're concerned with we want everybody to come out of this unscathed, including him. We respond. We evacuate all the rooms around him because we don't want anybody hurt. We know at least he has a knife. Maybe he's got other weapons. We don't know. We have equipment, we have shields, we have things like that. We can form up, in that moment. We can go in, try to force our way in that room. We can try to negotiate with him, try to talk him out. Those are some of the de-escalation techniques and things like that we use. It's what Mike's talking about, crisis negotiation. A lot of times that's not going to work. I don't say a lot of times. There's times when that won't work, just because we're dealing with addiction and mental health.
Right.
So me knowing these situations, being these situations before, what I say to myself as a leader and administrator is, if we go into that room with the guy with the knife, we're going to end up shooting and killing him. I mean, that's where I'm going. I can see that playing out. I know how that's going to play out. I don't want to do that. I call in a tactical team, and I mean, it's like Mike said, I can't describe to you the resources that they have that we don't have, but they come in, tactical team comes in, we surround that. They have equipment where they break windows out. They pump so much gas into that place. He's got to come out eventually, right? And we don't kill him.
Right.
And he doesn't kill us.
There's a piece of storytelling I have to share because it was so much fun. This is another live scenario. There's a series of scenarios that we do, and this is actually a really great accidental promotion for our Blue Baggers project that we're building, bluebaggersproject.com. And it's for a series of role players that, if, by the way, if you're interested, you have a great voice or you're interested in acting, bluebaggersproject.com. Anyway, we took over a middle school that was on break for the summer, and it becomes the centerpiece of the scenario. And the scenario is that there is not only one school shooter, there are actually two school shooters. And I am the counselor, and inside the counselor's office, my office, there are two students with me and one of the shooters. The other shooter is inside of the principal's office with the principal. But the TAC team has no idea that there's actually two shooters. And they don't find that out until they actually find it out. And there's a couple of really great wake-up moments inside of this one. The first one is, it's exactly what Chris is talking about. There's like no team, and then there's everything on planet Earth you can possibly imagine that's now outside of the place. It is the army descending. It is. You look at it, you're like, my God, look at this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the resources and abilities that Chris is talking about are absolutely paramount. Again, there are so many really great stories. We should probably share some of that over at crisiscop.com too.
Yep.
Anyway, the piece of the story I want to tell you is the instant they get me and the two students out of that room, and they happen to know that the guy that's playing the shooter is a guy that's on one of the local police department squads, gas it, throw the gas in.
Yeah.
And they don't throw the gas in because it's just a training op, right? But the whole point is that now that they know that nobody's in the room, gas.
Right.
And the reason that they throw gas is exactly what Chris is talking about, because when there is gas introduced to the efficient amount of what's going to be thrown into that room, nobody on planet Earth is staying inside of that room. They're going to capitulate and give up.
Incapacitate without killing.
Well,
without question.
I'd like to get Eric Alexander's thought on this, but I mean, I think the counter argument, right, because playing devil's advocate here, is we are capable of doing both. You have far more daily mental health crises than you do bank shooters. Not to say it doesn't happen. Right. So I think there is a thought out there that I understand of, you can do both. You might buy one less MRAP, and you put some of that into having a trained therapist, someone who can help with mental health issues on calls, right? So I think there is a perception out there that we're able to do both, but we as a culture, as a country, put more resources in one bucket than the other.
I'll comment, but let's hear Eric.
Yeah, no, this is, again, perception doesn't always reality.
Right.
There's truth. It's just reality.
Well, I agree. We could do both, right? Yeah. And I think we are doing both in a lot of places, as Chief pointed out. But I think, to close the loop on the MRAP militarization piece, I think people can suffer from a lack of imagination, right? And I think with the things that we're seeing today versus 10 years ago, it makes the case for a lot of what we're talking about here. But if I don't imagine that if I live in a place where the violence is drive-bys, I don't conceptualize the need for a military vehicle in a way that'll benefit me, right? So, and then if I live in a suburban area, I'm not comfortable with anything that reeks of violence, whether that's my neighbor having a handgun, let alone a military vehicle in the hands of my police department. So people have all these different perspectives, and I think we got to stop limiting our imagination on what because as soon as that thing benefits somebody, they're in love with it, right? They're glad you have it, right? So that's part of the social contract of being a cop, right? We can do both. We are doing both. But the political wins and
That's the key.
the political wins are
Right.
tricky, right, Chief?
They
Like,
are.
so,
Yeah.
So you have you have one side, and I'm talking extremists on the side. I'm not lumping everybody into this category, but you have extremists on one side who sort of fetishize police and military without being critical where appropriate, which I don't think is genuine, right?
Yeah.
And the completely unable to say George Floyd was murdered, to use an extreme example, right? Like, oh, come on, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, people are out there saying, oh, he died of a fentanyl overdose, or you know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like, we can't even acknowledge when something goes wrong. That's not genuine. And it doesn't do police any favors.
No, it doesn't.
And then on the other side, you're like, police are a bunch of murderers and we need to get rid of them all.
Right.
Well, come on.
That's
right.
That's
Like,
not the majority.
that's
by
not
the
the
way.
majority. I'm only
Why the
talking
majority-
extremists.
That's why we're in the room talking.
But
about
that
it.
but that minority has a
loud.
disproportionate impact on
You're right.
the discussion.
You're right.
And we've allowed this to happen. We've allowed crazy people to have an undue influence on the discussions that we're having, which again was why we're here, right?
Right.
We want to be able to say, like, think about, if you're raising a child, you are going to call that child out when they do something wrong.
Yep.
Right.
Because you care about that child and you want the best for him, right? It doesn't mean you hate that child.
On
And
the
there's
contrary.
Correct.
Yeah.
So like we got to do both of these things. We need to have people when there is a scenario, I'm not aware of one that's happened, where there are multiple school shooters. I don't feel like that's far-fetched, right?
Right.
We need law enforcement to be able to respond to that. And if not, we're going to be suing the city or the jurisdiction because the law enforcement didn't do what was necessary to protect children in a school. So like you can't have both sides of that argument,
We're going to break down, some of these active shooting situations and on some of our podcasts, both here and over at our copsandrobberstalk.com.
Mhm.
And this will kind of be a good segue to talk about some of those things. But yeah, I mean, it's like Eric said, we are doing both. When you get a political element entered into the situation, it just seems like things go bad from there. I'll give you some examples. Because it seems like things go either too far one way or too far the other. I don't think every police department needs an MRAP. But you might need access. I mean, you do need access to an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
And we had an MRAP that not our department, but our region had one. And it's not just used in that thing can go over everything. If I have a tornado that flattens an area, I can't get help. I mean, you look at the tornado that hit Joplin, that thing was 3/4 of a mile wide and it flattened
finger
that town
for sure.
If I need there's trees, there's houses, I can't get to people who need help. That thing will go through everything. Our cars won't. So, I mean, there's other practical uses. And like you said, we need to be reasonable. Does every police department need one? No, absolutely not. But on the other side of the coin, we had, this was years ago when the demilitarize the police thing came up. I remember a police department that put together they used some money to buy a mobile command post. That mobile command post is used in a lot of these different scenarios. But because of the demilitarize the police politics, they were told you can't put any armor on the inside of that. This was to stop bullets from coming into the command post.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's ridiculous. You can't put Kevlar on the inside of that. You couldn't buy any fatigues or anything that looked military and things like that. Things get taken too far, and when we're looking at, I remember people pushing back on patrol rifles. Everybody has patrol rifles now, but as times change, we don't, the police are not the military, right? There's different rules of engagement. There's different missions. I mean, there are some similarities, but I get it. Police are not the military. But as we progress, and to Mike Wilkerson's point too, we're training these scenarios that we didn't train years and years ago. Some of these situations are like military combat zones. I mean, I hate to say it, but
I
when
think
you
I think they're more dire.
you
We don't have in many military combat scenarios is, especially in regard to a school shooter, we don't have an entire school filled with children.
Civilians, right?
We don't.
Right.
Even in the most densely populated city in Afghanistan, where there was fighting going on, what you did not see were giant spates of children in the middle of everything. It didn't exist.
Yeah. And think about the history of how we got here, right? I mean, Columbine is always a turning point.
Mhm.
And law enforcement, the response to Columbine, because this was a typical response. You showed up, you surrounded the area, you contained everything, you tried to start negotiating, and then you waited for a SWAT team to get there. You continue negotiating, and then at some point you made the call whether you breach or you continue negotiating. Well, when the plan is, I'm going to go in the school and just kill as many people as possible, and there were some fallacies about, we had a whole presentation on Columbine. There were some fallacies about, the cops waited too long. The cops did. Some of that wasn't true. But the procedure, that was the process and procedures. That's what we typically did. We were waiting for the SWAT team to show up. That's why you have now, if I took what a police officer looked like when I first started, and I showed you that person in uniform, that
38 special.
yeah, it
Six
might have
shots.
revolver, right? I mean, no, duty belt,
Yeah.
Shirt, tie, the uniform pants, to today, outer carrier vest with the mollies on it, with all the equipment on it. In that car, I've got we've got level 4 body armor. That they look like a soldier. They look like a soldier, but they're going into situations that weren't prevalent, back then.
Yeah.
We have these school shootings. They need that protection. They need those resources. When they had the Hollywood shootout, right? Outgunned, shotgun's not going to cut it. Handgun's not going to cut it.
Yep.
We need that rifle. We need that precision. And there's valid reasons why we go to those tools and such, and it's to save lives. So, when I remember talking to the Stand United group, and we got to get our guys from Stand United on here. We got to get them in to have these discussions. But I remember talking to them about the Breonna Taylor incident, right? And and I didn't know much about the incident, but I remember them telling me.
Why don't you refresh people that just
and the Breonna Taylor incident was, guys, help me out on this. It was was it Kentucky or
It was
Tennessee?
Louisville, I think.
Louisville.
Yeah.
And there was she was a paramedic nurse. Nurse. And there was a warrant or some type of fugitive attempt that was attempted.
Knock raid.
Law enforcement. Well, there's no knock raid. I believe they had a warrant. I'm not completely sure. They did have a warrant to go in and search for a person, I think, right? Was an arrest warrant, or
if I remember correctly, and it's been a few years, she was at the time dating or living with, or they had reports that
this other subject that was
subject
wanted
was living there with her.
Okay, so they have a warrant. They go in. There's some gunfire that the police shoot. They shoot her by mistake, I believe. They said there was. I guess the other person had a gun, pulled the gun. There was gunfire. She gets hit. She gets killed.
It was her boyfriend who
was her
they
boyfriend
did the
that had
no-knock raid.
right.
He didn't know who
So,
it was.
Critically, let me add one important point. The man who was there with her was not the subject.
Yes. He just
he was not living there.
Okay.
He was there, door kick. He grabs his gun, doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They exchange gunfire.
So, anyways, right.
Well, he fired one round.
I remember the fallout after that, and the fallout was, SWAT teams are bad. SWAT teams are bad. SWAT teams are bad. So when I started talking about, because I didn't know all the details of the case, when it was described to me like this. I said, so tell me what happened. And I was told, well, there was a SWAT team that showed up to do a no-knock warrant, and they were going in, and
gunned down a black girl.
And then there was this other subject that grabbed a gun. He came out with a gun. They shot and killed her by mistake. The gunfire hit her, and I'm like, hold on. I was like, tell me the SWAT team. There were how many people in it? There was like 3, and I'm like, Well, hold on, red flag right there.
It was just
That's
the
not a SWAT team.
detectives.
It
I said,
wasn't SWAT, yeah.
there's three people going in. I said, and you said they shot the wrong person? Yeah. I'm like, okay, hold on. What I know about SWAT teams,
They don't
they
shoot
don't
the wrong
miss.
person.
They don't shoot the
I've
wrong
never
person.
heard of a story of SWAT shooting the wrong
They
person.
don't shoot the wrong person. If somebody pulls a gun on them and they see a threat, that person's going to get shot. They're not going to accidentally shoot. So my point being is, when I got the story right off the bat, not knowing anything about it, I kind of said, you know what? If a SWAT team would have been there doing this, I don't know that it would have led to, because the whole conversation was SWAT teams are bad, this and that, and I think that people were bashing them. I'm like, wait a minute, SWAT team would have showed up on this incident. That might have turned out differently. Hey, come out. She comes out, or he doesn't come out, or whatever. They negotiate. We have crisis negotiation, or no, we're barricading in here. I've got a gun, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're going to get gassed, right? And then maybe nobody dies.
Well, and I know a big
So-
takeaway from that, I think they came with the laws, Brianna's law, was that eliminated no-knock raids. That was the big focal point.
Well,
coming
That
out
was
of-
my biggest criticism of
coming
that.
out
I think
of
it puts
that.
everybody in a
Well,
bad position.
Well,
Well-
real quick, before we segue,
Yeah.
though, I do want to get our audience's feedback on the
Absolutely.
subject, right? The defund the police, demilitarization of the police, supporting police with more resources, right? These are all intertwined conversations, and they're
Absolutely.
not, no pun intended, black and white.
Right.
They all lend credence to each other. So under the YouTube, leave your comments, like, subscribe, go to Black and Blue Voices, leave us some feedback, but we need to hear from our audience. I think
Absolutely.
that's a big part of this conversation, right? Because I can tell you my perception, you can tell
Right.
me your perception.
Absolutely.
We've all got a different perception,
Yeah.
but we'd really love to get some feedback and understand where's our audience sitting on this.
Right.
Where are the questions you have that
Right.
Chief maybe even be able to answer behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Throw it out there. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
No knock warrants. Let's chat about that and clear up some perceptions on that. When a tactical team goes in, you talk about a no knock warrant. We're going to hit the door. We're going to go in. We've got a dangerous subject. We don't want to alert them. We don't want evidence to be destroyed, so on and so forth. Every person, I can't speak to how everybody does it, but a professional team, the way that they train, they hit that door. Every person through that door yells police.
Yeah.
That is a no knock warrant. They didn't knock. They hit that door and yells police, 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 police. So I mean, it's not
There's I mean, this is
so that I'm
this
just
is
trying
totally
to clear up
devil's
some
advocate. Yeah,
misperceptions.
this
but
is
yeah.
totally devil's advocate. And again, in a previous episode, I'd admitted that just having something over my shoulder, listening while I'm working, I have a lot of police video that's playing behind me.
Yeah.
And in one of them, there is a group of individuals that are doing exactly that. The
Yeah.
difference is that they are not the police.
And I believe in
And so that's
They're
There-
doing
that's another-
exactly what, for clarity?
Sure. So police, except that it's not the police.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a huge problem.
yes,
Right?
problem.
enormous problem.
Well, and I think something
Yes.
you guys brushed on, but I really want to dive deeper into it is the legislation, right? I mean, as I touched on, coming out of the Breonna Taylor incident, they came up with Brianna's law, which
Yeah.
banned the no-knock raids. And again, our audience, please, educate us if you have more information on that.
Yeah.
Send it our way.
Mhm.
But that was the gist of what I pulled from that.
And
So-
and touching on that too, I you know what, if you're not equipped to do those, any kind of raid, if you're not equipped to do those, I don't think you should wing it.
You
Going in
can't.
with
how many cops gotta
going
get
in with
shot
two
in the face,
going in with two
you
or
know?
three people, even on that case, the Breonna Taylor case, I believe that somebody was charged because they were recklessly discharging a firearm through the side door, through the back door.
Yeah.
And I'll
As the-
stand up and say this, as they should have been.
Well,
you
the
know,
information they used to get the warrant was a little sketchy. It's like that. That's a
You know what?
really
If you lie in an
big
affidavit,
black
there's repercussions
hole.
for that. I'm sorry. I got to stand up and say that's wrong. If you break the law, I don't care who you are. If you're
Yes.
a cop, you're not a cop. You face the same repercussions. We can't have that. We talked about our last episode. Things that make us look bad. Those are some of the things that make us look bad.
Yeah.
So
We don't
what
want
does
it.
responsible legislation look like, right? Whether it is to support police and give them more resources, whether it's to prevent Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, some of those things that I think we can point to and say, hey, these things need to change, holistically. And again, open for the entire group.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Legislation for what? What problem are we trying to solve?
That's
We have
the
a
question.
we have a lot of legislation in America
There's
that I'm
things that
not
you can't
necessarily fond
legislate.
of.
Yeah.
That we're trying to solve a problem that we can't
I
quantify.
agree with Eric. There's
Right?
a lot of legislation
So we
that you can
gotta-
pass that just doesn't solve the problem.
It
And
doesn't
you,
solve any problem.
can't
it's a
legislate-
political grandstand.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't
So-
legislate some things.
Correct.
And when people come up and they go, well, we're just going to legislate bad cops out of the system. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to make them take more training. Everybody goes to the training aspect. Training's important. You can't train. If
Doesn't
somebody has
solve
bad
everything.
ethics and bad values, you're not going to train it out of them.
So can I
Yeah.
reformulate your question?
Please
so
do.
I think I'll say from the perspective of the community, and I always keep going back to this, but like have conversations where educating people about how things work.
Mhm.
And I think we're
Like our
trying
show?
to play a role here.
Right.
Yeah. Like this show right here. Tell your friends. But I came out of Breonna Stewart thinking, man, no, not great. And I know enough people in law enforcement,
Yeah.
and I've seen enough of other sides of things where I have to confront my own ignorance about stuff where I'm like, this feels like a really bad idea.
Mhm.
Right. But I think it's unequivocal that sending cops kicking in a door in the middle of the night, non-SWAT division, right? In the middle of the night, and of somebody who's potentially armed is a powder keg. A lot of things can go wrong in that. So we need to be at a minimum judicious about how we do it. But I think I want to go back to that issue of trust is like the thing that unites all of this and I'm again speaking for myself and my perceptions, not everybody, but in the community of people who don't who I hate the term defund the police. I try not to use it, but people who are skeptics, right? Or have problems with police. The element of trust is so big,
Mhm.
right? So you say if a cop breaks the law, cop should get dealt with by the law, but
Should,
people don't
yeah.
trust that that's going to happen.
A lot of people feel like there's different
lot of
justice
people-
systems for different people.
Okay.
And you can make a statistical argument that that's true, a very compelling statistical argument.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Sentencing Project, which was written 60 years ago almost, we're seeing a lot of the same stuff today in 2025. So there is a trust element, and I think, and there's also a big piece of lack of understanding. There's an information gap, right? We fill in information with whatever's in our heads, or conspiracy theories, or opinions, or whatever. So I think that all of that is playing in. I think the role of legislation is we have a problem that we have identified and can quantify, and now we need to legislate.
Yeah, and it's I'm glad you brought that up. Because it really, I want to get a prosecutor on with just kind of behind the scenes on how you prosecute a case, how hard it is to prosecute a case, what kind of burden of proof and things like that you need. But I've also seen times where, because Eric's got his perspective, I completely understand what he's saying. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like sometimes we get somebody in law enforcement and they break the law, and then all of a sudden they're not held as accountable as the system holds other people accountable to this. Then I've seen the opposite too. So I'm like, because I've seen areas, if you're in an area that's not supportive of the police, and when I say supportive of the police, I'm not talking about the cop commits a crime and he's not held accountable. I'm talking about the cop commits a crime and he gets, and there is a push, not just through the judicial system, but through the court of public opinion to destroy them, their family, everything else. And I've seen that, and I got to call that out as wrong too. You're right. We want justice to be applied equally. And there's sometimes when they're like, well, no, this is a police officer. We've got to hold him more accountable. And I'm like, no. Do what you would do to every other person, in that circumstance, and that's where it's tough. And that's where, we bring a prosecutor in. I also want you to know the ins and outs of how to prosecute a case, how hard it is. Trying to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt
Really
isn't
difficult.
easy. It's not easy.
Really difficult.
So,
And I want to add one more thing, which is something you just said: court of public opinion. Right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you are in a community that is not supportive of police, as you put it. I like those words.
Yeah.
I think those are accurate words, precise words.
Sometimes it's distrusting, maybe you know, stuff
Distrustful,
like
right?
that. Yeah.
Distrustful. So, but a lot of that comes from those extremists on the right who will advocate for anything policing, up to and including murder in broad daylight. And so people in communities hear that too, and it gets all merged together.
Well,
So
and I
that
think
gets
that-
attributed to
yeah.
police as well, unfairly.
Yeah.
But that gets attributed to police.
And I think that that it also goes, if you take the extremists all the way on the left, that will go the opposite way and go, let's just do away with every police department across the country.
Yeah.
And I think that's why when we get to the two extremes, what we're saying is those aren't the majority. The majority of people come down in the middle and try to come up with a reasonable solution. So
Mike Wilkerson, I can hear your brain churning all the way over here.
Is that grinding noise?
It's more of a
There's a-
meowing.
He's
There's
furrowing
a-
his brow.
There's a component of all of it that, especially with politics, again, just over the course of the last month and a half, less than a month, or less than a month and a half, we have seen where a variety of different funding things that just happen to all be governmental
Mhm.
are all being dug into to the extent that they've never been dug into.
sure.
I've always been a fan, especially when it comes to money in regard to any organization, where everything money-based should be absolutely transparent.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that everybody has to know all the ins and outs, but when questions arise, especially in something in regard to like the government, transparency and money absolutely have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, we instantly get the whole pushing things into the conspiracy theory blah.
Right.
It instantly happens.
Right.
And it's exactly the same thing here with the concept of legislation in regard to any value that we're talking about, whether it's firearms.
Right.
Wait a minute. We've got to have more laws against firearms so that the bad guys won't bring the guns into the schools.
That's how that works, right?
They already know that there are laws in regard to bringing
right.
guns into schools,
Yeah,
and so
right.
another 5 or 6
Right.
of them are not going to
They're
help
not
anybody, much less impact the people that are law-abiding citizens.
Right.
Okay?
And they plan on dying there most of the time.
Right.
So what do they care?
Right. The second thing is that, especially when we're talking about money, is that very often legislation is then painted with the auxiliary things that, in addition to whatever the pseudo-righteous thing is, there's
Mhm.
also something else
Right.
that will also be tagged in so that these folding things can then also perpetuate whatever the goal is of whomever is either fostering or jumping in on the legislation.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm done with. And that's why when I see things like what's happening right now with the absolute spotlights being, look at that.
Yeah.
And look at this. And wait a minute, look at this. I love all of that because it instantly allows us to have the light bulb moment of, look, this shit's been going on for years.
Right.
Years across maybe even both sides of aisles.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And so
Right.
what is the plan? And the answer is we're going to have to do something different. And so when we talk about legislation, that's what I want to see. I want to see, here's what it was. This is how it has to change. And this is what we're going to enact. And very often I think people get latched on to one of those 3
Right.
segments.
Right.
And they never take the time to look at the whole.
Is the legislation frivolous grandstanding, or
Absolutely.
is it actually going to do something?
Can I?
And
I got an idea. I got an idea for a bill.
go ahead.
I got it solved.
Hold
Ready?
on. Let me leave the room.
Real quick before you
Alexander
do,
Bill.
I just want to
Fingers
shout
and
out,
ears, Chris.
shout
Fingers
out
and
to the
ears.
Marine Corps for passing their defense audit and budget 2 years in a row. Only
There you go.
departments do
Yep.
There you
that.
go.
Just wanna
Absolutely.
Throw that out there.
What if?
Job, USMC.
What if? And I'm out on a limb here. I just like to say that to see Chris's face.
He's always on a limb. I don't know.
What if you had to pass a committee to introduce a bill?
Well, they do.
It's already
do.
there.
They do.
No. But hear me out. Pass a committee and articulate the problem, quantify the
Well,
problem.
they, yeah.
Let
Go
him
ahead.
finish, Copper.
Go ahead.
No, I'm looking at. He knows why I'm looking at him like that. He knows why I'm looking at him like that.
He's got to define the committee.
You got.
Go ahead.
You need to be able to articulate the problem and quantify it. If you can't quantify a problem, you don't know you have a problem.
Tell you the problem with that right there is who decides who's on the committee.
Well, that's a whole other thing. We're always going to have that.
I'm just
We
saying.
can't get rid of that. That
You
problem's always
decide-
going to exist because somebody's always going to have a
What's the
quibble
baseline for
about
the
who's on the.
data?
Yeah.
But
you know.
but you have to you gotta make a reasonable effort to say, here's what's happening.
I agree.
Till money
Here's
gets
the
involved.
problem. Here's the scope of the problem. Here's what we want it to look like, and here's the solution. You
I-
got to demonstrate those 4 things before you can even introduce a bill.
I
for a
agree,
vote.
but you can take and manipulate statistics to make them say
Okay, I get that.
things that you
I
want
got
to say
lies,
too.
lies, damn lies, and statistics, but that doesn't mean I hear this with expertise all the time. I had an argument with a friend of mine about medical expertise.
It wasn't
in the context of COVID. It wasn't him.
Wasn't me.
It was nobody in this room. And his point was, well, experts lied in COVID. I'm like, so we just throw away all expertise?
Yeah, right.
Right?
Right.
So the statistics can be manipulated,
Mhm.
and we need to dig in.
Can.
You're looking at somebody who digs through data and helps people make medical decisions with that as as part of my job. So part of analyzing data is where did it come from,
Mhm.
what are the limitations, et cetera, et cetera. But that we need to do that. We need to introduce that level of scrutiny into lawmaking, because introduction of bills for the purposes of political grandstanding have real harms.
I agree.
Yes. Well,
And we're just like, that's how the sausage is made. But
It is.
Let me
come
take
on,
that one
it doesn't
step-
have to be.
let me take that one step further and maybe open this question up to the room, which I don't think that's a bad idea. I think humans are
It's never going to happen. I just like to live in a
always-
fantasy world.
you're always going to have fathomability with humans. We talk about, the bad apples out of a bunch. You're always going to have that, right? So for our listeners who are listening, right, young guy, young woman, old woman, across all economic and social spectrums, what can they do today? What can we do today that will actually have meaningful impact? I know you, Chief, had done some work with Stand United to propose
Yeah.
some bills. I'd love to
Yeah.
elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is this: if you can get, I don't know, let me sum it up like this: unity works when you bring people together. It works in policing. When we collaborate resources, we get together with other police departments. We pool all those resources. We bring everybody together to crack down on stolen vehicles, right? Me as a police department, I can do that within my venue. I'm only going to be so effective. I reach out and we form, a collaboration, and we go out, we're on the same page with all of these different resources, all of these different departments, and the community. Believe me, we make an enormous impact. So in legislation, the success I've seen is where you've got bipartisan support. People come together because it is for the common good.
Mhm.
The community's behind it, and then that moves a good law forward most of the time. A lot of times, what I've seen in legislation is where we will pass a law, but we don't go down and actually talk to the subject matter experts or the people that it, directly affects. In other words, if I'm going to say we're going to pass a law and, nurses always have to do this. Well, have I gone and spoken to nurses to see how that affects them? Have I gone and spoken to healthcare? Have I gone and done the research? That's what he's saying. Or am I just trying to pass that because there's a political expedience, a convenience,
There's a get.
a grandstanding
yeah.
platform?
I'm
that
not
gonna get on?
actually trying to solve a
So-
problem.
and
I'm
that-
trying to get political currency.
And that does happen. And I will call it out and say that's what jams up the works. So
There's a
Eric
lot of it.
Alexander,
Yes, sir.
knowing that a lot of people within these disenfranchised communities feel that way. Oh, well, there's no point in trying to get legislation. It'll get shot down. Oh, I'm not going to work with the cops, whatever it may be, right? Whatever excuse or whatever feeling they may be having. So they're not all excuses. Some of them are there's valid and merit to it.
Mhm.
How do we energize these communities? How do we get people on the ground level who it
Oh my
directly
God.
impacts and affects? And you're an intelligent guy. You speak for all Black people, so
I'm the voice. I'm the official voice of all Black people.
Sure.
That's a joke.
The,
For the record,
megaphone
for the
of the
record,
Black
joke.
community.
So, God,
I'll put you on the
why are you
spot.
like
I'm
you know?
just
See,
saying,
am I getting the hard questions for a reason?
Do you have like a
Um,
big cancel, a cancel stamp?
These are
Canceled.
That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the question. So I think there is a disenfranchisement among, and I won't say just Black people, poor people,
Yeah.
right? And I always point to Kanye West saying about George Bush doesn't care about Black people after Katrina. I would revise that to say, and I don't believe this, he should have inserted poor people,
Yes.
right? He should have inserted poor people.
Yeah.
Because how many votes are down there in those poor, low-lying areas compared
Yeah.
to, you know, other places in the country? So there is, go back to your point about political expediency and what can I get out of it? And I think that our lawmakers tend to go in the direction of not all, a lot of our lawmakers tend to go in the direction of the loudest voices that they hear. But on the community side, I think there's some significant disenfranchisement, which has occurred over centuries, literally. And I think that's a tough thing to unravel. And I think at the middle of it, but I will go back to a question that you asked that I can't answer, which is what can people listening do today?
Yeah. I
think the most powerful thing you can do is humanize another person, right? If you think about anything, any great evil in the world starts with dehumanization.
Mhm.
So how we talk about people that aren't us, and otherization is a basic human instinct, right? Tribalism is a basic human instinct. And again, I go back to the point that society has evolved so fast and yet our modern society is only 100 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
200 on a good day.
Yeah. When did we go from hunter-gatherer nomad societies to cities?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's only a couple hundred years.
Yeah. 400 or 500 years.
We've been on this planet 200,000 years. To put in perspective how fast this is all happening. And we've gone from zero hunter-gatherer to social media, consuming everything everybody in the world thinks all the time in 200 years. Our brains can't handle it. But all the great evils is rooted in this tribalization and otherization of people, whether that's otherization of Black people or otherization of people wearing blue uniforms or otherization of sexual minorities or otherization of foreigners or whatever it is.
Mhm.
We tend to get into our little tribes. We're still tribal in our brain, but
Yeah.
we are capable of using our higher brain functions to understand that tendency and to push ourselves back from the table and say, okay, as I've done, as I said many times with Chris, I'll be texting him something angry and I'll be like, all right, I'll sit back and I'll be like, I know that's not fair. I know that's not fair. And I've had my emotional reaction. Now I can step back.
Yeah.
And do, but I think when you are a police officer who is arresting someone who at the scene of a crime, who's a suspect, that you have to view that person as part of the community that you're sworn to protect. And if you're a Black person and somebody and the cops are rolling through your neighborhood, you have to look at that person and see somebody who's trying to get home to their family, who's trying to do the best for their neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to think that way sometimes, right? Like, because if you let your guard down,
well, the court of public opinion can get you too. And I agree. The other thing that I'll add to that, Eric, is the communication. Can we sit down? Look, let me profile myself, right? Christian, white, cop, 57 years old. There's a whole bunch of
judgments are being made.
There's a whole bunch. I'm just throwing it out there, right? I'm right wing conservative. Go ahead, let the hate begin. But here's what I'm saying. I'll sit down at the table and talk to people that are absolutely the opposite of me. They don't think the same way I do. They don't have the same political affiliations that I do. They don't have the same faith that I do. I will absolutely sit down. I might not agree with everything, but I can have a regular conversation, and that's why we're at this table. And that's what we say to the audience too. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to fit my profile. You don't have to agree with me I'll sit down and talk to you. I'll have that courtesy, because what I want to project is I'll still treat you with dignity and respect as much as possible. And that's what we ask in return. That's how you stop the evils of humanity. Because if, I've sat down with people that, and we're going to get James. We got to get James and Justin on.
Yeah.
James, I mean, he said, I hated cops. I mean, he straight out said it. But when you sit down and you start talking to somebody, it's hard to hate somebody.
Mhm.
When you start down the path of, you start talking to them, you start getting to know them, you communicate with them. That lack of communication, that spreads that division, and divided, we lose.
And you just articulated a story that hits on exactly what I said. I hate cops. In order to say I hate cops,
You gotta know them.
you have to other
Yeah,
cops.
right.
It's an otherization of people wearing those uniforms.
Right.
And you may have your valid reasons for doing so.
Right.
But you just have to, it doesn't cost anything to be empathetic and to see that person as a person. Now, if something goes down, then we got another problem. But that's what I encourage people to do. And the central theme of what you're talking about, sitting down with other people, are good faith arguments. There are too many people arguing in bad faith.
Right.
All they want is to confirm their priors. They want to get their political capital. They want to stay with the narrative of their team.
Play the game.
But like we were talking the other day on the phone. I come upstairs and my wife's like, "Who are you yelling at?" And I'm like, "It's Chris." but
he isn't yelling too. I mean,
But the point is, we were downstairs. I was downstairs in the basement. We were disagreeing.
Sure.
But we came to the middle because we're arguing in good faith.
Yes.
We're not calling anybody any names.
Yeah.
We're not painting with broad brushes. We're saying what we're arguing for is the perspective that he's arguing for, the perspective I don't have, and I'm arguing for the perspective that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And we cross-pollinate in that way.
And we say,
and that's what we need to aspire
to.
to.
I'll listen to you.
And before we get kind of our final thoughts on that, Mike, I want to chime in on this.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing I want to share with people, it's why I listen actively to people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher, I don't agree with on 90%
Most things.
of things and lifestyle, frankly, also.
Yeah.
But he makes me think. And I want to interact with people that make me think.
Mhm.
Because in addition to understanding a little bit more about whatever their point of view is, or what maybe I may not even agree with about them, I'm able to take what I don't agree with, and it allows me to give me perspective. And podcasting is capture perspective. There's no question.
Right.
Yeah.
And the knowledge that gives you, it gives you a completely different layer of foundation to build everything else that is your personality on top of it.
Right.
I'm dying to talk to the friends you guys are talking about, because I want to, having the bullet list of the questions that rile people up instantly is an instant get for that program. Mostly because there's a room full of absolutely cogent thoughted people in this room. And so between the questions being asked and the answers being delivered, there's all kinds of awesome that's going to happen inside of that program. And it's what's missing in just about every legislative branch room, every meeting room where there's a them and they meeting inside of the room to talk about insert whatever the topic is, or a courtroom someplace where something's got to be debated, but it can only stay inside of this square box because it's all we can talk about or focus on during this session of blah. And I hate all of that, because it's always way more. There needs to be more elbow room ability.
Yeah.
And people getting offended because somebody's trying to make elbow room to have a bigger discussion. I hate all of that.
And we need to get on, just like I had said previously in one of our other episodes, I believe we were talking about the media and how the media gets painted with a broad brush too. And I know ethical reporters, legislators get painted with a broad brush also.
Oh yeah. They
are human beings. They're good people. And some of them are very good. They're trying to do well in that. To understand, and I'll try to, it's going to be difficult, but we'll try to get somebody on that's either been in that game, been in that arena, to try to explain. You want to talk about peer pressure. You want to talk about, the court of public opinion in that. I mean, that's it. Yeah. Trying to survive. And I have so much respect for people. There's people that actually stand up for what they believe in, and it's to their political detriment.
Yeah.
but it's almost like you can either continue to get elected or reelected, or you can stand up. Sometimes it's you can stand up for what you believe and you're done. But we paint them with a broad brush too. And I know a lot of good people that are in elected positions that are good, honest, decent people trying to do the right thing.
Well, and for our audience at home, everything that we're saying is what we're trying to do. You have 4 people in this room from
Right.
drastically different walks of life,
Right.
different backgrounds, different experiences, different current situations, past situations. And we're all having hard conversations.
Right.
No one's getting mad. We may disagree. Conversations could possibly get passionate.
I'm ready to vault the table. But
Everyone,
I'm trying to keep it contained.
but Mike is getting mad.
Let's go on that Jerry Springer show. I don't know.
I would like to see that actually.
Yeah.
But we're out of our echo chambers.
Sure.
And that is what I would give my challenge to the audience on this one is get out of your echo chambers.
And don't
Have the
identify so much with whatever your echo chamber is, whatever your political. If it, like, I personally do not align myself with any political movement because I start with what's true, and every political movement. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong here. Every political movement
he's
that
got
I
that
know
broad
of,
brush out when he says every.
every political movement it ends up, if it gets big enough, it ends up in service of itself.
Yes.
And I think that is a broad brush statement, but I think it's fair. I think that's pretty unequivocal. You'll have a hard time pointing toward something big and influential that doesn't do that.
Intent starts out well, and then as it progresses, as you get more momentum, more power,
because power
add more money to it.
Power corrupts.
Well,
right?
and our audience
goes
needs to give us their broad brushes because I think that would help us understand
Absolutely.
where the public perception is. Right? Give us your breakdowns. Give us your broad brushes. Help us understand.
If you're in a group that suffers from that, we understand.
Yeah.
Please reach out. Go over to blackandbluevoices.com and stand up for that. Post that. Send it over to us, and we'll talk about it on the show.
Yeah. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Well, like and subscribe. But my challenge to the audience would be on the back of your challenge to the audience is that's okay.
Right.
It's okay not to. There are some things where I look at the conservative position, I'm like, that fits the facts. There are sometimes I look at the liberal position and that fits the facts. And I don't have to be on a team.
Instead of being parties, we could be people. Wouldn't that be
What?
something?
No, get out of here. What are you talking
All right, Mike, I'm going to start us off backwards today. Give us our final thoughts.
I want people to have a wider, open mind. I always try to think of life as you walking into any insert name of store, and who do you like to be serviced by when you walk into a store? Is it someone that doesn't talk to you or doesn't even acknowledge you that you're there?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it someone that's going to have a casual conversation with you about pretty much nothing, just how can they help you today?
Yeah.
And I know that when I get that, when I go into a store, I always go back to those stores. I always go and find those same people. When those people accidentally find me again, I feel there's a weight lifted off of me because I know that the instant that they find me again, I'm not going to have to be looking for anything because that dude's going to help me.
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, you're creating an atmosphere inside of that store, not only for you as the person that's conveying the service, but for every customer that comes into that store. They now have an atmosphere that they want to swim in. They want to come back to it. Better yet, they're going to tell other people about that same atmosphere, and they're going to bring more people so that you have more of the same style interactions. And so that's what I always strive to do that. I know that because I like to paint in what I think are very matter-of-factly things because it's going to help us move something forward, but I always want to hear the other perspective.
Yeah.
Create the atmosphere you want to swim in, and I don't know how you lose with doing that.
Reminds me of Like Water by David Foster Wallace. I don't know if you guys have heard that.
I'm not familiar with it. What is that?
David Foster Wallace was a philosopher. He was giving a commencement speech, and the whole point of his conversation was be like water. So when you're in traffic and someone cuts you off and you're ready to lose your mind, that person could be rushing to the hospital. They could be suffering a crisis. They could, it's how we move socially, the fluidity in which we move socially through interactions, our anger, our temper, our misconceptions of people. Be like water. So highly suggest everybody listen to that. It's about 20 minutes long, but it's something that I've had my kids listen to help shape their perspective.
I'll find it. We'll link it up at the
That's-
bottom. I also want to know how that differs from Bruce Lee's "Be Like Water."
That's sound, I was
Is that
going
the
to say
same
that
thing?
sounds like
It
very
sounds like
much like
wordplay.
our ACG group, our Applied Combatives group. Go over and check them out.
AppliedCombativesGroup.com.
AppliedCombativeSgroup.com.
This
They
is why I
are
don't say nice
our
things. on
collie
here.
and knife experts.
How dare you be thoughtful and
That's why I don't say
researched
nice
and well
things.
read? Get out of here.
So
All right, Eric Alexander, what do you got for us?
Cosign on everything Mike just said. We covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
We talked about political expediency and legislation and otherism and information and going all the way back to the root, which is sort of the defund the police idea. So I want to take us back there. But I think it ties in with what I just said about ascribing to a movement or an ideology or whatever, right? Like be a person. And just because you don't have to eat, if you take an ideology, you can buffet line that mofo. It's cool. Some of this, some of that. You don't have to take everything, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to take everything. Just be thoughtful about the issues and be fair and intellectually honest. And you can, and that plays into that defund the police thing. So there were things that were said under the umbrella of defund the police that I agree with, and some things that I wildly disagree with. But if you're being honest, you have to distinguish between what's fair to say or believe or think, or what's a fair issue or characterization of an issue and what's not. Right. Like my thing was after Breonna Taylor, I was like, oh, no knock raids, but you make a compelling argument for why no knock raids in certain circumstances are
Sure.
okay. So I have to acknowledge that that's fair. Right.
Yes.
And so that helps you. If you can do that, it helps you. It kind of feed each other, but you can step away because you are not your political opinions.
Yes.
You are not your thoughts and like all this stuff. Like you can step away and you can change those things without undercutting who you are. And I think that people get too identified with these things and they make it part of their persona, their personhood, and it shouldn't be. And that's why we're in trouble, because people feel like if I disagree with a political opinion I'm undercutting you as a person, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is a line there because there are political opinions that undercut people's personhood. We can talk about that on another episode, but that's a tricky line to navigate.
Yeah.
And that's people are going through that.
I would like to talk about that with a variety of people. There's a guy that I've been doing a podcast with for 6 years, or I'm sorry, I produced his podcast. I've been doing that for 6 years now, but I've known him since I was 16. And Dr. Mark has a completely different political perspective than I do.
Mhm.
But we can always talk about anything that we're talking about in political spectrum.
Right.
It's a warm room that makes you comfortable while still being able to pull out these reasonably prickly pears
Mhm.
and discuss anything that's on the table without at the end feeling like, oh my God, can I get out of this room without killing somebody?
The reason that people don't want to talk about it is because they tie it to their personhood.
Yeah.
So like we can talk about prickly pears and I can say, hey, Mike, I disagree with that. And here's why. Here's what I think you're missing. And you don't feel like I'm attacking you as a person. But like I said, there is this line over the last 10 years. There's this line where I think the root problem is we're calling everything politics.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
that otherization and dehumanization of people is becoming politics.
Mhm.
So now it's hard to agree with some things without feeling, it's hard for somebody to agree with some things
Well,
without
there's so
feeling
many
like they're
labels on it.
dehumanizing somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's that'd be a good episode. There's a
Yeah.
lot to get into there
I
for
would like
another
that a
day.
lot. We'll have to tap Dr.
But
Mark and see if he'll
but
say
to close,
Yes,
and I'll
please.
wrap it up. But to close and just reiterate, to step away, right? Step away from your political opinions. Like you can put them down. It's okay. They're not part of who you are.
Well, we're gonna get shirts made that say buffet line.
Buffet
that
line,
shit.
yeah.
Buffet
Yeah.
line that
Yeah.
I'm trying not
That
to make a
mofo?
bunch of
Sure, why
editing
not?
problems for Mike. I cuss like a
Yeah,
sailor, and I think I've done really well.
You
Thank
know,
you very
to-
much. Thank
to,
you. Thank you.
To follow
Chief.
up with Eric too. You know, I mean, there's a lot of label. Like when Eric says, well, there were some things in defunding the police that I agree with. there's nothing in defunding the police that I agree with. Nothing. But I think what he's saying, though, is when you say you want to provide resources to law enforcement because there's a need for counseling, because there's mental health, I totally agree with that. It's just that we put these labels on things, and then I think that's the segue into the political realm or the political grandstanding or whatnot. And then everybody goes, you said that, you must be with this team, which means you can't talk to this other team. My closing thoughts are this: find somebody that's not like you, sit down and have the talk. And if you can't,
100%.
continue to tune in here. We will find people that aren't like you. Believe me.
Somebody here is not like you with the diversity of opinions that we have.
The diversity of opinions. And we will sit down and we will still listen to you. We will still talk to you. And believe me,
Eric won't.
Eric might not.
Just to be clear.
But I mean, the times when I've been closed-minded or my emotions overwhelm me, so I won't listen. I've lost out on so much. So I've tried to listen. I've tried to say, hey, that's not where I stand. That's not what I believe. That's not where I'm at. I profiled myself, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't have these conversations with people, and you'll have more in common with them than you think you will.
Love it. I'm going to say that I am truly grateful for this group in this room. These are the conversations that you guys have in silo, that I'm sure Mike has in silo, that our audience has in silo with their friends and family and people around them. But these are the conversations we need to be having on the public forum. These are the conversations that are going to drive us forward. And I could not be more thankful to be sitting in this room with the varying opinions and backgrounds and being able to have these conversations. And I hope our audience can take that away from this podcast, but also into their own lives and have those conversations and feel that value amongst those around them. So with that, this has been another wonderful, sometimes argumentative, but always informative
That's the fun
episode
part.
Absolutely.
of Black and Blue Voices. I'd like to thank our audience. Please like, subscribe, give us your feedback. You guys are a critical linchpin in us moving this conversation forward.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. Want more content? Check us out at blackandbluevoices.com.